Welcome to the Business of Property podcast. I'm Stuart.
I'm Simon.
And I'm Tom Soane.
And we're all property people running our own businesses, and this podcast is just us chatting, as we often do, about anything and everything property. And once again, those eagle-eared of you will notice that we had a third name, Tom Soane. So just like to say welcome to the show, Tom. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, mate.
You're very welcome. Rather than us do your intro, do you want to just give a quick overview around yourself and what you're currently focused on, and then we'll have a chat?
Yeah, my name's Tom Soane. Predominantly, I'm a business owner and property investor and podcaster myself. And over the last few years, I've been investing property myself. Before that, I launched my own letting agent and estate agent. Before that, I was an estate agent, a letting agent, and a mortgage advisor. And so now I do pretty much everything to do with property, and I now get people asking me to be their mentor, which is really weird.
And I did note that you'd been an estate agent stroke letting agent for about 10 years. Is that about right?
I've owned my own letting agent and estate agent for about 10 years, but I started in estate agency when I was 19, so about 21 years ago. I've just given away my age, haven't I?
Well, you're still young compared to me, Tom, so you're all right there. So tell us just a little bit about jumping the fence from becoming an estate agent to letting agent to then becoming a property investor. So you've been poacher turned gamekeeper or the other way around?
Yeah. Do you know, it was the natural journey, really, wasn't it? And so starting out, I cut my teeth in an estate agent when I was 19, and I learned from a guy who I now realised at that time was my mentor, absolute phenomenon of a bloke, Matthew Drain. If you ever listen to this, Matt, then yeah, I've told him before. And then I went through estate agency. I left agency and became a mortgage advisor, so I saw things from a different perspective. And then I went back into estate agency in a corporate world, but felt like I could do it better. Like all entrepreneurs do, don't they? They think, oh, that's rubbish. I could do this much better. So I did. I launched my own estate agent. And here's a funny little story. When I launched my estate agent, if I'd have gone after funding and investment, maybe from the city, then I would have been the first ever hybrid estate agent, because that's what I built, where it was no shop front. It was all exploiting the online world and technologies, and having field-based agents, and I would have been the first. But as it happens, I didn't have the savvy at that time to do it. So Purple Bricks and all of those companies came along and did something similar and got millions. But then, so I went on that journey of launching my own estate agent and letting agent, and that grew very slowly. As a business owner, I hit rock bottom, almost went bankrupt, and had some absolutely horrific experiences where quite a few times I wanted to quit and stop. But then something inside just went, nah, you know what? You can make this work. You always said that you could do this better. So do it better, Tom. So I did. And now my business is going really well. And I started property investing for myself, because funnily enough, over the last 10 years or whatever it is, I've invested for investors. So I've taken their funds and invested it for them into property, whether that be flips, buy to let, buy refurbished finance, all of those different types of things. And after doing that for a number of years, I thought, hey, I think I need to do this for myself, seeing all these people making loads of money. So I was in the right business. So I decided I was going to do it for myself. And then, I started property investing on my own, and the first place I bought was a big 3-bedroom house in Southsea, which was it made a decent profit, and it was a nice big learning project too. And then I haven't stopped.
Am I right in thinking that first investment you made was a flip project?
It was, yeah, big flip as well, and I had it was a bit of a joint venture, and I learned a lot about the refurbishment element. Because when you're doing it for clients, then you see everything more logically and strategically. You're setting out a plan for the refurbishment. Your target goals and objectives are very much non-subjective, if you like, non-emotional. Because your target is just to make profit for that customer so he comes back or she comes back and buys again. But now you're doing it for yourself. Now all of a sudden all your fear kicks in. And when I first did it, I was looking for investment properties for 6 months at least. And I was viewing 5 or 6 properties a week, and all of them would have been great investments, but I was so scared of actually jumping in and investing because I thought this one, even though I bought hundreds of properties, successful properties for investors, this was going to be the one that was going to go horribly wrong and I was going to lose everything and the tenants were going to catch fire and sue me or not pay rent or the house was going to fall down. This was going to be that one property in the history of the world that was going to do it. So I was literally terrified of doing it. And actually the one that switched me into a different mindset, because bear in mind, all this time I'm walking into properties and I'm finding something. I'm going to find something that's wrong with this place because it's my livelihood I'm investing in now. And I went and saw this place in Lyndhurst Road in Portsmouth, very working class terrace property, 3-bedroom place. And it ticked all my boxes. It was perfect. And a great profit. It would have been a really good deal. Straight out flip. And as I was walking around it, I was thinking, I can't find anything wrong with this. And I left the property thinking, right, I've got to make an offer. But I didn't make an offer. I even knew the figure that I would offer. But I didn't make an offer because I thought, it's too good to be true. Too good to be true. And I was just scared that I wasn't going to make the right investment. And then from that property, I know the person that bought that property and they made 40 grand profit on it. And it really irritated me. And I saw what I was doing and I realized, okay, Tom, you're going to have to just go for the next property that ticks your boxes. You're going to have to jump in, take a risk and go for it.
Yeah. Give yourself a slap in the face and deal with it.
It was exactly a slap in the face. And do you know, actually, what was quite interesting about that little jump was you still have the fear, don't you? You still are terrified of losing your money and getting everything wrong and all of that. But now something's switched in here and I was able to then think back and think, okay, enough's enough. I've done this hundreds of times and people have made so much money out of me. So I said to myself, the next one that ticks the boxes, I do quite an educated amount of due diligence. And then as soon as those boxes were ticked, I put the offer in and then sat in a corner just terrified, thinking, I hope I don't get this wrong.
What I find interesting, though, is I'm kind of the other way around in that if I'm working with investor money, which I still do fairly frequently, is I'm probably more fearful. So, but it's interesting the point you make around all of the due diligence and thinking unemotively, because I think that's absolutely right for me. But when I'm buying for myself, if my gut says yes, I'm like, okay, I'm in for this, and then I'll go and do numbers. But there's less fear for me on my own because I think actually if we do hit the downside, I have to stomach it versus if I'm dealing with a lot of JV money and they're then asking me where that money is or where their interest is, that I've got a greater fear about refunding that. And it's quite interesting because we're looking at a project at the moment, which I can't share the details of because I'm still deciding whether or not we're going to put an offer in. But it's, let's just say it's a commercial building, but a good price. And I'm just waiting for, I get so fearful of it. Actually, we took the builder, plumber, Sparky, because I almost want, and I'm like, can you get me some costs in 48 hours? And they've all looked at me because we're talking like 6 figures plus. And but I get that fear for win JV money. So it's quite interesting that you feel greater fear when it's your cash. But again, I think I understand that.
It's purely the strategy of it, isn't it? You've hit the nail on the head there. It's the same thing maybe, but just on the different perspective. Because I like I say, same as you, I buy properties for investors and I'm able to just follow a process of mathematical calculations, some questions that I answer to. If they're positive answers, then that's a box ticked. And if they're negative answers, then that's a box unticked, And then every single one of those boxes, so to speak, have got a a mathematical value to them. And for me, whenever I'm investing with somebody else's money, I can very easily calculate the risk. I can calculate what the offer needs to be, what the return on investments need to be, what the yield is, and so on and so on and so on. But when it's for me, I start bringing all the emotion, or not so much now. Now I've been doing it a bit. Now I'm a bit better with it. But when it was for me at the beginning, all of the fears were coming in. And actually, do you know what my biggest fear was? Is getting it wrong and people thinking, oh, he's an idiot. Look at him. What a terrible property investor. Even though I knew I'm a brilliant property investor. I knew that, but my fear was telling me, oh, you're going to get this wrong. And, you know.
But that's the mindset, isn't it? Because my experiences, and I've made a few. If I had a bleep button, I'd bleep myself now. But I've made a huge mistakes. Even I would say within the last 2 years. Well, within the last year of a purchase, actually, I think I'm only going to about break even on a flip we're doing. And in my head, I want to class that as a mistake. But it's been a huge learning. But the thing I just want to pull out that you talked about there, I think, which was important for me, is you talked about understanding the risk. And I think for anyone that's doing this, that is the point, because the project we're looking at and I've got a business partner in this one, and he's really tentative because we don't fully know why this property's come back on the market. And there's a number of reasons. Now, we've done the due diligence that we can to understand that, and we've got a sense of it. But then for me, just like you said, it comes back to the numbers. And I sort of said to him, look, let's do the numbers. And then if the numbers work for us, we've uncovered what we think we can uncover through whatever, surveys, legal process, then we're going in eyes wide open. So regardless of what's gone on before, as long as we can handle the risk, the downside, then we can move forward. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about there, isn't it?
Spot on. Do you know, because I now try and apply a figure to everything. So including the not emotional, but the human element. I think you can calculate mathematically, as well as the numbers and the bricks and mortar and the finance element and the fees. So I try, if I'm coming up against a property that has an element of doubt in it, then I calculate it based on the human element. So I'll give you an example. Let's say, for an example, we're not 100% certain about the GDV, the gross development value, the job done value, I call it. We're not 100% sure at that. You take your best and worst, and then I'll allow an element of contingency. And that just changes my offer. It doesn't change the property job, it doesn't change the refurbishment required, it doesn't change anything like that. All it does is changes what my offer needs to be in order to pick up this property and mitigate my own risk. And it's the same when you're buying for other people as well. If there is any element of uncertainty, I go back to I look for example, I look at the odds. What are the odds of this happening? What are the chances that you're going to get that 200 grand value, and what are the chances you're going to get the 190 grand value? So yeah, and I always try and apply an element of mathematics to every single part of it. But then I think it comes down to your own experience as well, doesn't it? You have to apply your own knowledge and experience to those deals too.
Yeah. So Simon, where do you sit on this spectrum, do you think?
In terms of applying maths versus feelings versus risk tolerance levels, I'm definitely at the maths end. I mean, having created my own software product to help me calculate all the financial elements of it and provide financial forecasts and comparisons between different properties I'm considering and things, I don't think I could claim anything else, really, could I?
No. Right answer.
I'm curious, Tom, your first investment was, you said, sort of tied up in your emotions and things and getting going with that. Does that mean you ended up being sort of very hands-on? Were you turning up every day to check on the builders? And what was your sort of level of involvement after you'd signed on that dotted line?
Funnily enough, no. It was the signing of the dotted line and the commitment of it that I was most fearful about, because because I've got a letting agent, and the builder that does all of the construction work for my letting agent, my estate agent, has done for many of my clients before, is an excellent builder. And you've got to have those relationships, haven't you? They're vital.
I'm really disappointed because I've really had a vision now of Tom with a register just checking in the tradesmen as they come through. Yeah, Sparky, yeah, in 9 o'clock.
Well, let's figure that out. Yeah, I was on them every day of the week. I was literally hammering. No, but yeah, it's a weird one, really, because I knew the job was going to be a good job. I knew that the builder was there and prepared with contingencies. I'm a big believer in contingencies. And I knew that we'd really analysed the refurbishment job and what fixtures and fittings and furnishings were needed, what sort of, everything. And I think we analysed the cost very well because, again, I've done that hundreds of times. It was more the buying of the property, and now I'm committing myself to this property. Actually, I'll tell you how I got over it as well, which is quite interesting, and I still apply this logic now. I understood, I accepted that I'm fearful of something, and it was taking that first step, right? And there was a fear element there, and I tried to understand what that fear was and where it was coming from. And so I realised that I was scared that property prices were going to drop, or the refurb was going to go horribly wrong, and something was going to fall down and cost more money, or it wouldn't sell and stuff like that. So it was all losing money. It was all a losing money mentality. So I went back to data. And as Simon says, the mathematics is the key. And I love maths. I love the numbers element. I love the creativity of the numbers in property. So I went back to that. And I looked back, and the last time that property prices dropped by anything dramatic that was going to lose me all my money was never. So I realised, do you know what? I'm just being silly here, aren't I? Because actually, worst case scenario is property prices drop by 20%. I mean, when's that ever happened? Really, in the southeast, when has that really ever happened outside of London? So I looked at it like that and thought, okay, the chances are that's not going to happen. And if it does drop by 20%, I'll still make about 5 or 6% on my money. And I'll just walk away and go, okay, learn a lesson there, next. So I went back to maths, and the maths solved the problem for me. It's hard to do that though. If you're just an investor investing for your first time, it's very hard to just go, okay, maths is all I need to worry about.
I think you mentioned there in the southeast, a drop of 20% seems pretty unlikely. But I think I'm right in saying that you're currently investing up north, aren't you, in your current projects?
Yes.
So how do you feel about the risks of a big drop up there? Is that something you're considering differently for that region?
Do you know what? For my own ego, I like to think that I'm being really clever up there. I've got a few little factors to it. So I am investing up and around the Newcastle area. I've got 4 properties going through legals right now. I'm not buying in the slums, so to speak, but I'm buying in areas of current development. Now, I know that there are a few very significant developers that are building up there at the moment quite heavily. And I know of a few pretty significant developments that are coming over the next 2 or 3 years. So I've tried to buy these places in areas that either have a good demand currently and or have a good sales market currently. But also there's 2 of those properties that are in a real high development area right this second. So one of them I'm buying up there is I'm going to turn into a HMO in 2 years' time because they're building a gigantic hospital in the road that I'm buying on. So I'm going to turn that one into a HMO.
Why Newcastle? What's taking your interest up to there?
Development up that way. The northeast is getting quite a lot of development. I know of a few of the big major developers are investing heavily up there. You got a couple of other areas I've got my eye on too, but I've got a really good team up in Newcastle as well. So I've immersed myself with a couple of guys up there who are sourcers. One of them's a surveyor. He's got his own agencies. And also I've got contractors up there now. So I have a good contractor team. So really for me, it was, look, it's just a flip. I'm not doing any, apart from the HMO, which I know is going to be a good longer term one. The others are just flips to build cash flow. and we're getting them at such a good rate, I can tolerate something in the region of about a 20% drop in price, and I'll still make 20% on my money. Some phenomenal profits to be had up there.
How did you get to form your team and know these people so far away from where you're actually based?
I know. Do you know, I made a friend at a training course for letting agents, funnily enough, and he went along with his team, and we just got chat. We hit it off. We went out and got drunk, and as you do, and
well, not anymore these days.
No, I know. 2 kids. No. And we just hit it off. We just started chatting. And he said, yeah, I source properties. And I said, oh, do you? Well, I'm buying properties. And we were talking about his area. And then I just went up to Newcastle to have a look around and visit. Spent a couple of days up there with him. And he was showing me some of the areas and talking to me about some of the developers that are operating up there. And I knew of some of them. Showed me some of the developments that are currently going on. Showed me some of the plans that are currently in. And I just got all excited about it. And I thought, hey, there's some good money to be had up here. He also showed me a couple of the projects he's doing. And on our first deal up there, we did a joint venture. So it said to me that, he's confident in it. He knows it inside and out. He's probably one of the top names around there anyway for property. Tony Fairs, by the way, if anybody's interested. You should get him on here, actually. He's a really good chat. But yeah, certainly started chatting with him, and then I went up there more and more, and then I started immersing and networking with more property people up there and contractors and so on. And I say built a team. I don't have a formal contract in place with a team of people. I just now have a good team of contacts and fallbacks up there. So yeah, I found one property. We did that. That one's looking good. I got, like I said, I got 4 going through legals. So it's just, look, obviously there's a risk, right? And I've tried to calculate based on historic data. And I look back over price increase, decrease, demand increase, decrease over a period of time historically. You can get the data from places, land registry data, Rightmove data, everywhere.
Patmo as well, quick plug for my own software. I provide
yes.
I provide price history in an area when you're searching on properties and things as well. So
there you go.
Couldn't let that go without mentioning.
Other software providers are available, but we don't talk about them.
No, they're not.
But we don't talk about them on this show.
They're no good, though, are they, Simon?
No, they're rubbish. They're absolutely rubbish.
But the thing is, that's a good point, though, Simon, is because data now helps you identify growth areas for a start. Now, I always did it the old-fashioned way. So, using more modern technologies is fantastic. But you can monitor high demand, you can monitor low demand, but you can also see where there's an area of low demand. Is it going to jump back up again in the future? You can see price increase, price decrease, growth spots, development areas. So all the data's there somewhere. Just needs to be interpreted.
And I think the other point that Simon and I talk about quite frequently on this show is, other than flips, which obviously you have a very specific objective in terms of time frame and money, but generally property, we should be thinking about that in the longer term anyway. So even if there are those drops, and as you say, historically, they're not going to be as big as, I mean, even now looking at some of the data, that if the fallout comes post-COVID, post-furlough, everything else, post-stamp duty holiday, I was reading the stats. They were saying that on average, they think the drop could be, and of course, no one knows, but something like 3.4%. And, the headlines would be Armageddon. And I think, well, okay, 4%, we'll stomach that. We'll still be able to go to the shops and buy our food, But obviously, flip's slightly different. But even if you get a 10% drop, if you're thinking about a long-term strategy and you're holding, then even then the concern wouldn't be as great if the market crashes.
Absolutely. And if you've got the right strategy in place, then you'll probably recover that 4% drop over 2 years anyway, wouldn't you?
You'd hope so.
And even if it's 10 years, you're not thinking if you've got a property that's got good cash flow coming in, the rent prices aren't going to change. So you can be pretty sure that your cash flow is coming in, you keep it, you're not going to sell it in the next couple of years if it's got good cash flow and it's got good yield. So
yeah.
So hey, I think though you're absolutely right. Is the headline would be Armageddon, 4% drop. It might say 4% in the southeast, which means 20% in the northeast, and there's your headline. They would never say 4% property price drop. They'll say 20%.
Yeah.
Brad, doesn't it? But we all know, you and I all know that no, actually, it's probably going to be more like 4%, and that will only be temporary. And all that changes, I always tell anybody, any property investor I ever speak to, I always try and tell them that, the circumstances don't change. The numbers don't change. The only thing that ever changes is your offer. And that's it. If property prices drop by 4%, then your offer drops by 4%. If your yield dropped by 4%, your offer drops by 4%. It's as simple as that.
And I think it brings us back around, actually, full circle to where you kicked off about doing the due diligence and being fearful in a positive way. Because my only example is I did buy back end of 2007. This was personal, not investment. But we bought back end of 2007. We invested about 30k, and this is in the southeast, just outside of London in Surrey. We invested about 30,000, and then my personal situation was we had a baby. Just had a baby, and then found out we were having twins. Realised we had to move very, very rapidly, and so I had to sell within a year. Of course, the market crashed 2008, and we sold it for exactly the same price we bought it for, having spent 30 grand on it, and that was the price differential. So I learned very early on that exactly what you're saying is actually we can try and we can't factor in crashes, but we know that there's an uncertain market. However, if you go in with eyes wide open and you're comfortable with holding on to a property and you're not looking to sell it in the next 12 months, you're going to be okay in the long term.
Yeah, I agree. And it's tough to compare as well, as investment from personal, isn't it? Because you spent 30 grand. If that was an investment property, you probably wouldn't have spent 30 grand.
Well, let's be honest. It was my wife that spent 30 grand, not me. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and no, I'm not saying you wouldn't spend any money, but you probably have spent in order for your own comfort and lifestyle. But, in that exact instance, it also comes down to timing, that you've spent 30 grand and the property prices, you haven't, if that was an investment property, you would probably be looking for the best time to make your yield on that property investment, right?
100%.
Yeah, but you chose that you were selling that time because it's your home and you had to move into another home. So therefore, you couldn't control that timing, and you couldn't control, it wasn't an investment. So you're not looking, right, okay, we can't move until 3 years because that's when I get my 15% yield.
Exactly. Yeah. No, absolutely right.
Then.
If it's an investment property, you're much less likely to have twins suddenly turn up forcing you to sell. So,
and if it is, it's probably twin brothers that are actually let's not go there. But no, you're absolutely right.
We don't need to dig into your JVs at the moment and who you're investing with.
Yeah, if it were investment, we'd have spent 50% less. I can guarantee you that. We'd have spent 50% less than the whatever Roman Italian tiles my wife wanted at the time.
Yeah, and then you probably would have hung on for another year or two when the market bounces back and rented it out. And there's loads of different ways. But yeah, and people always say that to me. When I used to do estate agency and I used to go out valuing people's properties, and they say, and I give them a value, right, your property's worth 200,000, and they say, oh well, we bought it for 190 and we spent 25 on it since. You can't really, okay, great,
yeah,
nice. But, if someone wants to buy your place, that's what they're going to pay for it.
The market decides, and it's as simple as that, isn't it? The market will tell you. We had that conversation this morning because we are looking at properties again, and someone said, do you think my property is overvalued? And I said, well, how long has it been on the market? And I said, well, it's about 1.5 years. I said, well, I think you've got your answer because no one's bought it. So, I mean, sorry to be black and white, but that's, if it were the right price, you'd have sold it.
There's a really funny misconception in the estate agency world from the customers, in that, first of all, on the buying side, everyone thinks that the estate agent sets the price and they decide the price, and they blame the estate agent for putting on the market too high in price. Was very rare, because an estate agent only gets paid when they sell a property, right? So therefore, you can guarantee 9 times out of 10, actually, that the estate agent did not decide that high price. They probably went in and valued it correctly, but the owner said, no, I want to go on the market at 200,000. And then it doesn't sell. And most estate agents in the country have a day a week dedicated to price reductions. Because if a property's not sold, you have to bring the price down. It's as simple as that. But then on the seller's side, they all think that if the agent puts it on for a lower price, so in that same example, if the property's on the market for 200,000 but it's really only worth 180, that if they put it on for a lower price, they're going to lose money. But I kept on trying to tell people, you don't have to accept an offer. If we put it on for 180,000, then we're just trying to get people through your door, to try and view it, and then they can make offers. But yeah, there's a big misconception that agents set the price and decide the price, but also that sellers will lose money if they advertise their property for any less.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And I'm already hearing like 3 or 4 different topics for podcast episodes, which I'm going to note down. But the final thing I'll say on that is it's really interesting because I had this conversation the other day, and one of my views on that, because it's just strange that, so for when I'm putting a property on the market, my conversation is always very hopefully transparent with the estate agent. And I say, look, I just want to price this to sell it. Of course, given what I do, I'm going to have an idea in my head of what I think it's valued at. But I always say, don't give me the top heavy view. Just give me the view that you think it's actually worth, because that's where I want to market it. But I'm just interested in your viewpoint, given your background. I was talking the other day, there's a big penchant now for people putting bands on. So we've now got this valued guide price 200 to 220 or two. My perspective was, I think that there's just this disparity between what the vendor actually wants and what the estate agent wants. So they put it on for that price because you almost get the best of both worlds, because you can guide it at the low price where the vendor's expecting a high price. What's your view on that, if that makes sense?
It's all a bit of a gimmick, if I'm honest with you. So if you see a property on Rightmove, for an example, that's just asking price 199,995 or 950 or whatever, then that is the price. Maybe the agent's gone in and valued the property at 190, 195, and then they've put it on at a nice figure to capture all of the market underneath the £200,000 limit. Because when you go on Rightmove, you can search up to a certain price.
Yeah.
So if you go on the market at 200,001 penny, then nobody searching up to 200,000 will find your property. So that's the first bit. And then when a property hasn't sold for a period of time, then the gimmick is to try and get a different number up there. And so the agent will try and say things like offers over 190,000 or offers in excess of, or guide price, something like that, just purely so that they can get that property seen by another category of searchers. Simple. Yeah, so it is a bit gimmicky. So when you see an agent that's an estate agent that's advertised at offers over something or offers in excess of or offers in the region of, then it's just purely to try and capture a different set of eyes on that property. But then when you get things like guide price, now this one's getting a bit complex now, because where you've got so many online auctions, as well as, modern auctions, as well as the traditional auctions, you'll get companies that are traditional auctioneers, they'll advertise a guide price because they have to. But the modern auctions or the online auctions like I Am Sold or Pattinson's and companies like that, they'll advertise guide price because they are auctioning the property, but the agent that has given the auctioneer that property also advertises it as guide price because they have to. Can't have it advertised, the same property advertised at 2 different prices. So always historically, guide price was auction, right? That's what an auction is. So it's now become a bit misleading, I do think. However, I would say that probably is affecting standard residential purchases the most. But I think if you are a property investor, then you've got to search in a certain way. You have to search properties up to 200 grand, but then go back to find that property that you like the look of and you think it's a good rental area, strong demand for that area, and make your calculations in advance to calculate your true yield on a property, not fake yield. I really get worried for people that calculate the old-fashioned or weird way of calculating yield. Simon will probably agree with me on this. I'll tell you in a minute. But anyway, calculate your true yield, calculate your due diligence, work it out, and then go and book a viewing. And your offer will be based on your own calculations, not what offers in excess of or offers in the region of or guide price. Your offer is your offer.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Funny enough, I did. I've just recorded a video about how to make offers through estate agents because I realised that I'm on both sides of the fence, and I could probably advise people on how to make their offers through estate agents because estate agents don't work for the buyers. So, how to get an estate agent to really fight your corner as a buyer when you're not actually paying them a penny. So it's a trick, but I've just recorded that actually, and it's a lot of stuff like sharing your workings and how you work with the agents and stuff like that. It's all a science.
Yeah, and a lot of it fairly common sense from my perspective is that if you want to work with someone, you want someone to be on your side and support you. You've got to be transparent. You've got to share your workings to the highest degree that you can. But the final thing I was going to say, because I know quite rightly we've kind of gone over time because this has been a great conversation, and hopefully we'll get you back soon, is that guide price that you were talking about, and you said it affects sort of residential purchases as well. That's what I think, because you put something up for, let's just say, 200 to 220. As a purchaser, you're not looking at 220, you're looking at 200. So I always feel like you've already anchored the low point. And estate agents that we speak with, they always go, well, it's a range and it's going to be in that range. And I said, well, but if you've got a range, if it's 200 to 220, my head's saying 200. So that for me is where, and you've articulated it really well, how that comes about. But it's exactly what we were thinking is that, you've got two different points there, but already you've anchored in someone's mind the lower end. So from a vendor perspective, I don't see how that really works. Yeah.
Do you're trying to get them through the door. And if you have got a property that is really worth 220, you would normally advertise at 220. But you put in there this guide at 200 to 220, you're probably going to get a lot of interest of people that want to come round. So for a estate agent, that's job number one ticked, isn't it? Get people through the door, because if you don't book any viewings, you can't get any offers. If you can't get any offers, you can't get any sales. So get them through the door first of all. On the, like you say, they're subconsciously thinking 200,000, not 220. So you get them through the door, and from there you get offers on the table. And if you've got a lot of people interested in that property and they start making offers, then you can start encouraging some sort of bidding war. Like it or not, that's life, isn't it? We're going to go and have a bidding war. And then you might get someone that offers 200. So you would go in and offer 200. I might say, all right, I'll have 205 and then 26, 27, 28. And it will probably get up to 210, 212. And that's probably what it's worth. But they've got you in the door in the first place, which is, you know what, like them or hate them, estate agents don't get paid until the job is done. So their sole focus is get people through the door, get that place sold. And it will sell for what it's worth. You can't deny that. Nobody can. So, yeah, and it's interesting as well that, I mean, I don't like it. I love a good old-fashioned asking price, make me offers. But, hey, sometimes you've got to get creative, huh?
Absolutely. And I think you're right. Ultimately, the estate agent's job is to sell the property. And the thing is, I don't think you can have it both ways. We couldn't sit here and complain about them doing that, because tomorrow when we've got to put a property on the market and we need to sell it, we'll do whatever we can to get that property sold. So, yeah, I don't, it's just good talking it through with you so we can get a good understanding of it. But I think from my perspective, I think you do what you can as long as it's obviously ethical and legal.
Yeah, exactly right. And look, there are some agents in the country that let the rest of us down. But, on the whole, agents are just there to sell a property. They're not there to get involved in anything else other than sell a property, earn their fee, move on.
They're just people like you and me, aren't they?
Exactly right, yeah.
I could do with another hour or so to continue this discussion, I think. But unfortunately, we have run over our normal upper limit. So I think we're going to have to finish it here. So, Tom, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they do that?
Best place is probably through my Facebook page. I would have thought it's just Tom Soane, or Tom Pink Street, I think is my Facebook handle or username. But yeah, that's probably the best place where everyone contacts me. Outside of that, I can take an email as well, which is tom@pinkstreet.co.uk. Pink Street, by the way, is one of my letting agents.
Thanks for clearing it up.
We'll include your links and contact details and things on the show notes as well.
Cool.
Seeing as you did the intro, Stuart, do you want to do the final little outro bit to finish us up for this week?
Yeah, well, firstly, I just want to say big thank you to Tom. Thanks for joining us, Tom. It's been really good. And there's lots more that I think both Simon and I would like to delve into if you'd be willing to join us again.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I love it. And as you can tell, I do waffle on a bit, so I'm always happy to give a waffle.
Awfully versatile as well he is. And for everyone else, I hope you've enjoyed the show. As always, if you haven't yet, please do leave a rating or review. It really just helps us spread the message. And as Simon's already pointed out, thebusinessofproperty.com is where you'll find all of the show notes and all of the key points that we've talked about today. Other than that, we'll see you on the next episode.